Yeah, this video. Okay. So, we are on episode 4 of season 6 of Ray Donovan, and this week we have Pudge. Yeah, Pudge. That's the literal name of the episode. What is it with these seasons and these interesting titled episodes? I mean, I've already talked about this in the previous videos and whatnot, but yeah, episode 4, Pudge. Let's take a look. So, it starts us almost immediately after where He Be Tight, He Be Mean ended. In fact, you could just put this all into one whole feature-length film for all we care. But here's the plot. So after receiving a call from Mickey and finding out that he's kidnapped Jay White, the guy playing Mr. Lucky, Ray winds up arriving to the set and finding Daryl tied up and beaten, while Mick winds up calling Ray and saying that he wants $3 million to get out of the country and to live different lives and away from the law, too. So, yeah, he's got to deal with that whole ordeal. Another same old Ray versus Mickey ordeal. The never-ending war ever so continues. But anywho, while all this is happening and we wind up being told on how much Mickey wants in order to let Jay White go, basically Samantha gives Ray the money, but in return, he must figure out how to pay for it. Though, knowing the show, it's probably not going to happen until sometime later, or in the big case, sometime never. But there are lots of other plots going on, and thankfully, my prediction of leaving out Officer Mack was a bit wrong. I mean, he still serves as a side character. We don't see him at least big or quite as often as we do with Ray. I mean, as I've stated, Officer Mack would have his side stories, so in some form or fashion, he'll be involved. With this, he's approached by an FBI agent named Emerson, where Emerson winds up talking with Officer Mack about some previous arrests and certain evidence disappearing. And in turn, this forces the officer to wear a special badge of some kind that has, I'd say, a mic or a tracker on it, but I'm gonna say it's a mic. Again, you're watching this immediately live and writing all this down, not very easy to recap. 30 minutes, it's easy to think of it off the top of your mind. But hour-long programs, this is needed. But yeah, one of the main side stories about this, other than Mickey dealing with his dilemma of everything that's going around him, especially with the new situation that Mickey's gotten himself into, we wind up seeing Smitty living in peace and harmony after being newly engaged with Bridget, or Bridge, or whatever you want to call her. But there is a dark side to Smitty. Yes. For a moment you thought Smitty was an innocent person, but as it turns out, Smitty actually had a troubling past, which we'll partially get into as soon as it gets to the near end of this. But at this point we wind up seeing Smitty talking with some sort of stranger whose name is Chalky. Like, Chalk. You know, Chalk Zone? Yeah, Chalky. Which sounds a lot like Chunky from Goonies, if I remember that right. Yeah, but apparently he's selling drugs, and turns out that there's something that in his past we never knew about Simony. Is that he's a drug seller? Or possibly it could be a loan shark. Who knows? But on the sideline, basically in some points of time, Mickey winds up looking at Jay and just tormenting him with his certain speeches and whatnot. One where he winds up talking about how he's pissed off about how his original script got changed and a lot of the selections were overpicked. It's insane how threatening Mick could be. But that's not the scariest part. Like, the scariest part comes later on in the episode, where he winds up just suddenly quoting some portion of the Bible, which is scary as sin to think of him doing that. But then again, this is Mickey we're talking about here. But with that in mind, continuing onwards, Ray winds up gathering Mickey's demands, which includes the passports, because in the very beginning of the episode, as he's talking with Samantha, he winds up receiving a couple of photos showing Mickey and Bunchy and Little Maria, their pictures. So they have to set up a passport for them so that they could leave outside the country and whatnot. But as a little added flavor for the $3 million, he winds up adding a tracker, just to make sure that Ray knows where he's going, and try and find the right point that he can arrest him. Yeah. But here's what happens afterwards. And I'm going to be saying that quite a lot, aren't I? So, it goes back and forth about, like, where we see Bridge meeting Novak while Bridge is handing out flyers for, character for mayor, all that. But we also wind up cutting over to Smitty as he goes out and about on his bicycle, selling as much drugs as possible to help out with his loan shark stranger, Chalky. I will never get that name out of my head, or just such a stupid name for a bad guy. But I've seen worse. Yeah, I have. But yeah, Ray winds up meeting up with Bunchy as he tries to convince him not to follow what Mick is going through with this. But seeing as he has no choice, and currently he's in an emotional wreck right now, desperate for anything, as we've seen in the previous episodes, we wind up finding this ordeal that he gives Ray a promise that he'll, of course, give Mr. Lucky back, but also try to make sure that Ray keeps his promise that if he receives Mickey Donovan back, he won't kill him. So, basically, Bunchy grabs the money, returns home. They're willing and ready to go. Well, like I said earlier, Mickey winds up tormenting Jay with the Bible thing over again, talking about Abraham killing a lamb. I don't know the full story because I'm not that deep into anything, and this whole video gets demonetized. But yeah, he winds up tormenting Jay. Jay is set free, just not before he winds up peeing himself, because that's a cliche, you know? You know, man scared, pees his pants cliche. I think that's gotta be in the TV trope somewhere, as a cliche. I may need to look that up now. I'm surprised. But they have the money, they're all packed, they're ready to go. They should be out of the country soon enough and heading to JFK Airport. However, before we can see those events, Smitty winds up returning. We wind up seeing Smitty back in his apartment as he's approached by Chalky and his little gang as they just pummel the crap out of him. And minutes later, or an hour or whatever, Ridge winds up taking a look and seeing what happened. Which, how will Ridge take it? Will she ever know the ordeal? Or how Smitty was back then? That maybe he is and has been a drug seller that she didn't know. We won't know. But we wind up coming back to where, of course, in the last episode, a friend of his who's working in the boxing gym with him tells him about how there's a big match going on. Or like there's this underground fight club that happens around nighttime as he's approached by him. At least this friend approaches to him. Terry basically takes a peek at it in last week's episode, and Terry winds up expressing interest in boxing again and winds up going down to that underground fight club to, of course, like, start to return back to being a underground boxer, you know? Yeah, so Bunchy winds up punky, Screw you, Chalky! These stupid names. So, Bunchy winds up calling Ray, giving him the location of the car. Ray winds up going to the car, and he winds up seeing Jay in the trunk. As, of course, he winds up bringing him home, which leaves basically Ray, Mickey, and Bunchy, and Little Maria ready to go, because they got the passports and everything. So, pretty much, as they put it in Sergeant Zero's 2, good to go. So, how about we look at Terry again? Sure. Basically, he decides to take on his first match of the night. As he's talking about the boxer he's going after, someone he tells him that, oh yeah, he used to be like this formal police marine person that has this strong background. Sort of kind of why they give him the nickname. As, of course, that's where Terry winds up taking upon himself his boxing match against that Polish fighter. Which, of course, although Terry may go down, but in the end, he winds up striving, fighting, and surviving. But with Ray receiving info on Sandy, thanks to Jay, we'll see what happens from there because, well, Sandy is a questionable character. I'm not sure what her connections are with the Donovan family, or I just haven't been paying attention. I've just been writing all these. But we wind up seeing that possibly she could be or not be a relative to the Donovans. She could be an island to herself, another crime family, or whatever it is. Maybe she's a side member of the Sopranos, who knows? But yeah, Ray winds up getting Jay back to the set to shoot a film, to shoot Mr. Lucky, but unfortunately, it looks like Jay is suffering from the PTSD that Mick has laid upon him. Basically going flat out insane, almost like he's wanting to kill somebody. And even the director's mistaken him as method acting. Well, I mean, he did see method acting in the last episode, so who knows? But yeah, in a big twist, which we will say till the end of the episode, so moving on. Ray winds up meeting with Smitty outside of a pub or some sort of brewery of some kind, as Smitty winds up talking to him about his problems. That is, being that he's involved with loan sharks and drug deals and everything. But his past shows more than that. It turns out he was a full-fledged criminal. Yeah. Before Bridge met Smitty, Smitty was a troublemaker. He'd wind up stealing cars, giving them to auto shops for money, selling drugs for a certain amount, and having to pay out loan sharks for him to survive, even if there's so little he can do. But Ray basically says he's not going to take it down, as he winds up dragging Smitty into figuring out where the location is. Which I cannot remember what the... Might have been Albany, but I could be thinking of the GTA 4 map layout in Grand Theft Auto 4. I mean, if that is right, then it's my memory. Yeah, they go off to that area to basically meet up with the loan sharks. You don't see it till later on. But in the end, Bunchy winds up randomly calling Terry out and sort of giving him the truth on how he's never seen any of his matches, despite the fact that he sort of constantly says that over and over to him. Which, that's Bunchy for you. But then again, he's still an emotional wreck. But afterwards, Ray winds up meeting up with Chalky and the gang. I'll never get that name out of my head. I'll never understand why people are named that. Or gangs, for that matter. But Ray winds up meeting them, and both him and Smitty wind up pounding the ever-loving crap out of the gang members and threatening them not to go near Smitty ever again. Or at least, he'll pay a certain amount, but never bug him for more. Which, there's a good side towards, hopefully, Smitty's redemption. But, of course, he still sort of kind of argues about baseball bats, because, as you know, we've seen Ray with the wooden baseball bats, but Smitty's just like, well, why not have an aluminum one? Just Ray questions him. He's like, did the New York players ever use aluminum baseball bats? Hell no! You know who won the World Series? Did they use aluminum bats? Hell no! Or something like that. It is kind of funny how the scene is played out. Just them in the car chatting, and then they just bring up different types of baseball bats, so that's hilarious. But yeah, in the end, we wind up finding out that Sandy, in a big twist, Sandy winds up actually stealing the money off Mickey and Bunchy that were to get them out of the country. As Sandy winds up driving down the highway, drinking and smoking with all the money. And we won't know what happens until next week, because this is the end of the episode. So yeah, there is Pudge. Pudge. I don't know whether it's referencing, but it could be almost like Chalky or Smitty. Actually, Smitty sounds like a good name. At least it doesn't sound terrible, but never mind. So yeah, Pudge, how is it? Definitely is starting to kick things in the high gear, but it's a big twist that we actually wind up seeing Sandy turn against Mickey and Bunchy to help them get out of the country. And so now, both of them and Marie are out of luck. How they will solve their problem next week, we won't know until next week. But the plot lines between Ray and Smitty do themselves a decent job. I mean, it is sort of kind of a little bit interesting to see Ray basically helping out other people that are sort of family. But it's also interesting that we may get more of a story with Officer Mac. So hopefully may wind up getting at least a few more minutes of screen time throughout the season, because, I mean, Officer Mac, I mean, he seems like to be a decently put up, developed character. It'd be worth it to at least see more of Officer Mac in the story. I mean, I like to see where his talk with FBI agent Emerson winds up going. Another thing is, how will Jay wind up getting over his post-traumatic stress over the whole ordeal with Mickey? How will he overcome that? Like I said, we won't know until next week. And modestly, let's say Pudge is, at best, a mixed to positive episode, like somewhere around here. So yeah, that is Pudge, and I look forward to next week's episode. But for the moment being, I am so worn out, and by the time of the recording of this video, November 18th, I gotta watch The Land Before Time. Yeah, Land Before Time, the original Don Bluth film, because it's 30 years old now, so it's tradition for me, apparently. So, yeah, I guess see you guys next week for the all-new Ray Donovan episode, and just see you then.